Good morning and welcome. This is Sunrise Daily. I'm Ayo Makinde, and it's a pleasure to welcome you this Thursday morning. I don't know if it was so much of a pleasure for the members of the House of Representatives yesterday, looking at some, of course, their job of looking at several issues that we have to contend with in the country. One of them is the one that concerns illegal checkpoints in the country. The lawmakers want the Inspector General to ensure the removal of illegal checkpoints across the country. Of course, it is sequel to a motion moved by Representative Ifeanyi Moma because it wants there to be investigation of loss of lives on the Onitsha-Owerri Expressway. Maybe you want to take a look first before we go into it.
Wednesday's plenary session gets underway in the House of Representatives as a motion of urgent public importance related to police and military checkpoints is raised.
Mr. Speaker,
Representative Ifeanyi Moma says over the weekend, 20 people died along the Onitsha-Owerri Expressway, and he blames it on these checkpoints which he believes are wrongly located.
on Sunday, because of the routine check at the checkpoints, a trailer that was laden with lots of goods lost brake and crammed over 24 of people. Bodies were littered all over the street. In fact, Mr. Speaker, I personally traveled home on Monday to go and have a meeting with the youths of the community because they were putting themselves together to go and attack some of these police stations because of some of these inhumane and degrading things that they have encountered there.
Amendments are made to the motion to prevent a repeat of such an incident.
The House should mandate the Inspector General of Police to ensure the removal of illegal checkpoints across the country.
Mr. Speaker, I want to amend that they should remove all those wooden barriers in any checkpoints across the Federation because it's affecting the lifespan of our road.
Meanwhile, in a separate motion, the House is calling for urgent measures to secure schools against kidnappers and bandits.
The Federal Ministry of Education, the State Ministry of Education, the private school owners have not taken steps to provide adequate security in schools across the country to prevent attack.
In the meantime, the Green Chamber is still interested in the report of its committee on the former Vanguard journalist Todway Salem, even though he has been declared deceased.
What we are hearing from the grapevine is that that young man is going to be buried on the 11th of this month. And the committees that have been given 2 weeks are yet to even submit a report. It's not just about whether we found him dead or not, but the findings and what led to it and what else to do. These are things that I think I'm worried about that our committee has failed to do.
The Speaker mandates the relevant committees to ensure that the report is submitted within a week. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
Thank you.
Issues bordering on security and especially the activities of our police service. And the questions are rife. I mean, first of all, the issue of illegal checkpoints. I don't know, but I think I've lost count of the number of times that I've heard announcements that the police, the IGP has ordered the immediate removal of illegal checkpoints. How do we even know the one that is illegal? I remember in 2015, the IGP at the time, Solomon Arase, said, look, he's ordered the removal of illegal checkpoints due to what was then called bribery and corruption. The question then is, who ordered the return of some of these checkpoints? As I said, we'll need to know which one is a legal checkpoint as opposed to the ones that are illegal. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, the case on hand, just as you heard this representative mention there, is just one of several that people would take the law into their own hands if they find that the police service that is supposed to be protecting their lives and property, they are actually the ones that are extorting them, making life unnecessarily encumbered for them. Take this particular one. I mean, of course, how many? We could only say as much in a minute, in a report of maybe 2 minutes or thereabout. But part of what the lawmaker, Representative Moma, said was that nursing and pregnant women are not spared. Nursing mothers are made to carry their babies up high as they walk across the checkpoint, sometimes being forced to walk over a kilometer. Now, all of this is going on, and at the end of the day, the police is at the receiving end. The question is why? It raises again the question of welfare of the police service. This has been talked about so many times, and I recall that the present IGP saying that he is very well aware of all the issues and he is on top of all the issues. But the ways in which lives and property of people are at risk hasn't reduced in any way. Don't let us forget that we have learned a lesson from the NSAS debacle. And the dust is yet to settle on that. The trust efficiency between the police and the people, between the government and the people, is still very, very high. I think that at this point, we shouldn't really be pointing fingers, because at the end of the day, many of the policemen came from society. The people who were in the police service like 30 years ago, a good number of them are not in the police service today. Police is made of people from the society. What kind of lives are we giving our people? That they will go into government at whatever level to perform services for the upliftment of the lives of fellow Nigerians and the protection of their property. The issues are still there. I mean, look at the case of the young man, the journalist that was talked about. His body was found, and according to the House of Representatives, we don't know yet what happened. Is that, as some people have said occasionally, is this how we're going to continue? We need to instill hope. We need to instill trust. We need to instill confidence. And it has to start with justice. We'll take a short break, and then it'll be time for the papers today. All right, let's begin with the leadership newspaper today, and it is interested in something that is already hugging the headlines, and we're hoping it's not the beginning of the fourth wave that many dread already, and it's already haunting many countries. COVID-19, amid Omicron concerns, unvaccinated federal workers barred from offices seek deadline extension. That story you'll find on page 4, and a few riders there on the front page. Exercise records poor compliance, several MDAs deserted. Workers crowd vaccination centers. FG confirms 3 cases of Omicron variant. Nigeria warns against vaccine inequality at UN General Assembly. Well, this latter part of vaccine inequality has been a long time coming, so we just wonder how soon that will be taken on board. And under that, the picture you see there, Fayemi Kuka, others decry worsening living conditions. This is very interesting, especially at a time when we hear the spokesperson of the president saying Nigeria is top 5 in the quality of living conditions in Africa. A number of questions come to my mind, but he's not here to answer them, so let's just leave it at that. Good morning, Markwa.
Good morning, Ayo. It's good to see you. And very interesting, shall I say, soliloquy this morning. But look at what The Guardian has on the front page for you. Federal government forces COVID-19 jabs. Workers plead for time. That's the lead story on the front page. ASCSN wants April date for unvaccinated workers lockout. NCDC confirms 3 cases of Omicron in Nigeria. Don't panic. Vaccines still effective. NCDC tells Nigerians. WHO, Omicron now in 23 countries across the world. World Health Assembly to develop historic global accord on pandemic prevention response. To all of the stories around COVID-19 just underneath the headline, federal government forces COVID-19 jabs. Workers plead for time. It's on page 2 of the paper. And when you look at the bottom here, you see this, why we found hashtag NSAS panel's report unreliable. That's from the Lagos Attorney General. It's on page 2. You also have a few other stories here. Nigeria records 440,000 new cases of TB yearly. So while we focus on COVID-19, let's not forget that there are still other diseases which we're battling with. Tuberculosis, cholera. I mean, we were told that over 3,000 people have been killed this year alone owing to cholera. That's just cholera. We're not counting malaria. We're not counting typhoid. We're not counting all manner of other diseases that are threatening our lives. About 440,000 new tuberculosis cases. We have a lot of work to do. 29 die in Kano boat mishap. That was a very sad story as well. You want to read details because it involved children. I understand Islamia children who were traveling on a boat were the ones who were most affected by this tragic incident. Page 5 will give you all the details in case you're wondering, you know, where they were coming from or where they were going to. Even those who will ask, is there a river in Kano? You might want to read the story on page 5. Let's leave it there for the Guardian newspapers.
Very sad commentary coming from Kano about that boat mishap, and but another one that piques my interest, Malkwe, is where you talk about several diseases that we know usually happen. You talked about cholera, and there's Lassa fever among several others. And the only thing it reminds me of is the environmental sanitation workers during the First Republic. I wonder if, even after the First Republic, I wonder if there is any coming back to those days where local government environmental sanitation officers went from house to house to ensure cleanliness of the home so that these diseases that we're talking about can be prevented and we can save lives and property. Daily Independence leads with this one. Dearth of skilled manpower may delay deployment of 5G. That's what you have on the front page of the Daily Independent newspaper this morning. And you may want to find out what that means. How good is that for us? Okay, are we over all the conspiracy theories around 5G? Okay, all of that you have on the front page continues on the inside pages. Under that picture, Customs Police hurt trade facilitation at ports and borders. This has been a long time coming as well. I remember we read a headline story here once where some reports said that there is 100 million naira daily extortion at the ports. Well, is this part of it? I don't know. You might want to find out. Stories on the front page continues on the inside pages. Right above the nameplate, Saraki-led Senate failed by confirming Malami as minister. Who's saying that? Adeyeye says Ministry of Justice failed with incompetent lawyers. Well, the story is on the front page, continues on the inside pages. That's Daily Independent this morning.
Telegraph now. Look at this. Malami, public interest to determine political situation for Kanu, excuse me, says Lagos panel report not conclusive on Lekki Toll Plaza incident. It's a page 3 read for you. Bandits threat, nothing must happen to Christians in Zamfara. Khan tells federal government. Child security agencies want criminals, kidnappers arraigned. Consider declaring abductors as terrorists. Reps tell federal government. That's also on the front page. In Bazulike Amechi, why led Igbo leaders to Buhari, seeks Southeast governor support to end insecurity. Governors declare war on Nkurumiri. That's also on the front page. COVID-19 loans. Federal government moves to recover 600 billion naira. Defaulters to be barred from borrowing. That's also on the front page as well. And I don't know what the story means, but you might want to read it. 2023, Kuka warns Nigerians against repeat of 2015 mistake. Mistake is in parentheses there, and you might want to see details on page 5 of the story. Let's leave it there for New Telegraph.
Nigerian News Direct has this one on its front page. Reps order FIRS others to recover 2.6 trillion naira debt from 77 oil firms. That story is on page 22. We're not hearing this for the first time. Question is, what's happening to it? You may want to find the details on the inside pages, page 22 to be exact. Right beside the picture on the front page and under one, NSAS white paper. Lagos complied with law to reach its decision. That's attributed to the Attorney General, and you'll find the story on the inside pages of the paper this morning, and several others also on the front page. Well, FIRS is saying something why Nigeria did not sign OECD minimum corporate tax agreement. Find the details on the inside pages. That's the Nigerian News Direct today.
Well, Daily Trust has this one, COVID-19, Omicron, Buhari, 10 ministers jet out to Dubai, how Nigeria detected 3 cases, Ramaphosa's visit successful despite scare, that's according to the president, federal government's directive flops as unvaccinated workers access offices. Page 5 will give you details. Death toll in Kano boat tragedy rises to 29. So they're still counting as they recover more bodies in that very tragic boat incident. Page 6 will give you details. Ignorance, emotion threatening national unity. That's from the Sultan. Electoral Act, what will guide us in replying Buhari's letter? That's INEC. We understand that the president has written to INEC for advice on whether or not to sign the Electoral Act. So page 31 will give you details on what INEC will be relying on to guide the president on whether or not he should sign the Electoral Act into law. You have a number of other stories at the bottom there, but let's leave it there for Daily Trust.
Daily Times newspaper has this one on its front page. Buhari to Ramaphosa, let's enhance people-to-people relations, avoid unhealthy competition, says a strong bond of brotherhood between Nigeria and South Africa of great benefit to Africa. That's what you have on the front page of the Daily Times newspaper this morning. And it's quite interesting. About the nameplate, stop divisive, barefaced publicity stunts. Be patriotic. Presidency tells Serap. Yep, that's it. It's on the front page, it's right above the nameplate, and a number of other stories under the pictures, under the major story right there. But there's one on the bottom strip. Will no longer keep quiet over autumn's misrule in Benue State. That story is ascribed to the APC, and you find the story on page 15 of the Daily Times newspaper this morning. That's the Daily Times today.
Well, Vanguard has this. Federal government confirms 3 cases of Omicron variant in Nigeria, urges states to introduce measures to curb community transmission. Canada bans travelers from Nigeria, Egypt, Malawi. Federal government effects vaccine mandate policy, bars unvaccinated staff from offices as mad rush characterizes vaccination. So that's on the front page of the Vanguard newspapers. Anambra court declines to nullify Soludo's election. State of the Nation, Sultan, Fayemi Jega, X-ray challenges, proffer solution. It's a page 14 read. And 5 years of whistleblowing. Nigerians still afraid of reporting corruption, federal government laments. There'll be questions as to how did the first policy go? How was it treated? Why did it die? Why didn't it go well? Page 8 perhaps might give you details. Consider designating kidnappers as terrorists. Reps urge federal government. It's part of the story that they're covering for you. And look at this. It's a page 5 read. NSAS, federal government backs Lagos white paper. Okay. They have details on page 5 for you. And you have a number of other stories just on top of the nameplate. But look at this. Federal government puts electricity subsidy cost at 1 trillion naira. Is that per year, that's per annum, or per what? I don't know. But 1 trillion naira is what the federal government puts electricity subsidy cost at. Okay, who are we? When we get an official, certainly we ask questions. If you flip to the back page, Ballon d'Or award hits sour notes. Ronaldo claims Messi stole Ballon d'Or. Messi's dad slams critics. Messi will keep his 7th Ballon d'Or in Barcelona Museum. We have all of the details. I mean, ever since that award was given to Messi, it doesn't seem to have gone down well with fans of CR7 Ronaldo. I don't know. It looks like it's getting messy now, but you might want to pick up a copy of the Vanguard to see all of the details. Let's leave it there for Vanguard newspapers.
That would be a very, very interesting stealing. I mean, he stole what, I don't know. I don't even know where to put that, but that's what you have in the Vanguard newspaper. Nigerian Tribune has this one. It's on COVID-19. As COVID-19 vaccination deadline expires, FG enforces no vaccination, no entry for civil servants. That story is on page 2. Enforcement hasty, discriminatory. That's according to the workers. Insist on deadline extension to first quarter 2022. 3 Omicron cases in Nigeria detected in passengers from South Africa. That story is on page 2 of the Nigerian Tribune this morning. Right under that picture, after hosting Ramaphosa, Buhari leaves for Dubai with NSA, NIADG, and 10 ministers. Stories on page 2. Above the nameplate, 3 interesting ones there. Special report on why 180 billion naira customs assets rot away on Lagos waters. Stories on page 22. Unity can't endure where injustice thrives, as ascribed to Governor Fayemi. Stories on page 29. Military fared better in promoting national unity, says Jega. What does that mean, really? The story is on page 29. And on page 5, any shop, location, hard drug is sold in Southeast will be forfeited to government. That's ascribed to the governors. Find that story on page 5 of the Nigerian Tribune this morning. Several others to pick from, but then I'll leave you to do your picking all by yourself. And with the Nigerian Tribune, we've come to the end of a look at today's papers. We're back after now to take on the issues for the day. Please stay with us.
Effectively leading to this recovery.
Corruption and the cost of governance is pivotal at the 3rd National Summit on Diminishing Corruption within the Public Sector, attended by the President Muhammadu Buhari at the State House. All 3 arms of government are in attendance as the Chief Justice of Nigeria makes clear that the judiciary must remain insulated from any form of interference or inducement for the nation to thrive.
Various cases for feature, cash for feature, were made in hundreds of millions of naira. We shall not rest on our oars until every trace of corruption and undue exercise of influence negatively secure unmerited advantage over others is stamped out of our climate.
In a bold move to halt cases of illegal recruitment, racketeering and diversion of public property by civil servants, the ICPC reveals that it has uncovered nearly 300 duplicated projects, amounting to 20.1 billion naira in the 2021 budget.
ICPC investigation of some cases of illegal recruitment, for example, forwarded to us by the head of the Civil Service of the Federation, has so far implicated the Ministry of Labor and the University College Hospital Ibadan. A syndicate of corrupt individuals within the service corruptly employ unsuspecting Nigerians, issue them fake letters of employment, fraudulently enroll them on IPs, and post them to equally unsuspecting MDAs to commence work. ICPC is prosecuting one of the leaders of the syndicate, from whose custody we retrieved several fake letters of recommendation purportedly signed by the Chief of Staff to the President, some signed by ministers, Civil Service Commission, and other high-ranking Nigerians.
The stark revelations apparently receive further backing from the President.
Those who illegally bring in personnel into the public workforce by illegal recruitment, those who paid their personnel payroll, those who retain ghost workers must be and will be severely punished.
Undoubtedly, strengthening existing agencies that fight corruption is quintessential for the government. But beyond this, improving governance through a change in attitude is also fundamental for the federal government. From the presidential villa, Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
Well, that was at the ICPC's third national summit, where some Nigerians, some deserving Nigerians, were also honored that particular day. Some work that ICPC has been doing, a lot of work, if you ask me. But we'll see just how that is impacting corruption, as there's supposed to be the Independent Corrupt Practices Commission. And one of the mandates of this particular administration when it was coming into office was to fight corruption, improve the economy, and also tackles insecurity in the land. But corruption, how much impact has the ICPC, perhaps alongside the EFCC, how much impact have they had on the fight against corruption? Is it going anywhere? Are we making progress, or are we retrogressing? These are some of the questions we'll be taking on with Gabriel Okeo, who is a principal lead and the Chief Executive Officer at BudgIT. You're welcome to Sunrise Elite this morning.
Thank you very much, Maupe.
Well, good to see you. I know that BudgIT has been doing some work with ICPC, and there's some, especially with monitoring. Yeah. I know that the very first monitoring report they released, I think on constituency project, that was done in collaboration with BudgIT. I do not know how if your collaboration has gone on, but I do know that the ICPC has expanded their mandate into not just the constituency projects now, but also projects being done by the executive arm of government. Are you a part of that?
Yes. ICPC started this initiative it's over a year now. It's called a joint constituency project tracking group. Not just BudgIT, but also media agency, also part of that group, where we go out with ICPC to track projects on the field. We have been opportune to go out with them to see some projects, and we will say that that is a great initiative that is pointing out some corruptions that are very obvious now that we see. However, much is still yet to be done, not just to point it out, but to really see that actions are taken to forestall them repeating themselves. But yes, ICPC is doing that, and we are glad to be working in collaboration with ICPC on that so far, yeah.
But so far, I mean, there are different definitions of corruption. But I think the one that is most prevalent, and the one I heard most recently, is where public officers or those in authority abuse whatever office of trust that has been given to them and use it and advance it for personal gain. That's the one that is most common. And then sometimes you find out that there's systemic corruption, there is grand corruption. I know the vice president oftentimes talks about how in the administration, at least they can say that grand corruption has been reduced. But we do know that corruption on the whole is still very much prevalent. So with the work that you've been doing, where would you say that you've had the work that ICPC has been doing, perhaps alongside BudgIT and other partners, where would you say it has had the most impact? Okay, so I think, not looking at the whole picture of what ICPC is doing, but looking at it from the perspective of what we are privy to and what we go out with them to do is on tracking capital projects, right? And you know that even before ICPC started this initiative, this is something that is a mandate of BudgIT that we took as a mandate to track capital projects. And we do not just track capital projects for the fun of it. We track capital projects for two reasons. When we started BudgIT 10 years ago and we are simplifying access to data, we realized along the line that the most part of the budget that appeals the most to citizens is the capital project, right? And it's because they want to see what provision government has for them or for projects that is calling for attention in their community. Now, aside from that, we also then see that there is a lot of fraud, embezzlement, misappropriation of funds and corruption that happens around there, right? Where you see a budgetary provision, for example, for construction of 6 blocks of classrooms. Then you go to the field to go and track, and then you are seeing 3 blocks of classrooms. And what happened in such a situation is the community that is being served this inadequate provision will also be happy. They will be glad, not knowing that they have been shortchanged, and not necessarily to the knowledge of the federal government. It might just be it might just be a syndicate between the contractor and whatever agency of government that is responsible for that project. And so over time, what we do to educate citizens so that to inform them even before contractor comes to site, right, so that they can cry out, they can shout when they see disparity. That is what we now see ICPC amplifying now. ICPC beaming their lights on capital projects and then going out to also see for themselves, right, and then also relying on some secondary data, right, that we provide to them sometimes to then pick that up and probe further. It is now coming to bear that what we are doing, it is not just crying foul cry, it is really happening. And for this assertion that the ICPC chairman made at the just concluded summit, right, we were particularly glad that came from ICPC chairman, a government agency, right, saying that 257 duplicated projects in 2021 budget, right? And why we're glad is because when we released our 2021 budget analysis report in May 2021, May this year, we had cried that we identified 316 duplicated projects. And it was as though we were unpatriotic. It was as though we just want to be a national embarrassment or embarrass the nation before the international community. And so now coming from the ICPC, it's not as high as yours, though.
It's not as high, but just maybe we wouldn't know how deep they went into the analysis. We combed the whole, in 2021 budget, there were about 19,000 plus capital projects.
Duplicated?
In general.
Okay, in general.
Yes, and we identify about 316 duplicated. And when we say we identify 316 duplicated, there is evidence to show, right? Those are projects that are duplicated by codes. So each project, each budget line in our national budget have a unique code, the ERGP codes, right? So when you see 2 projects bearing the same code, it calls for attention because it then means that something is wrong somewhere. Those are projects that are also the same by description. Those are projects that are the same by location. So you have 2 agencies of government that wants to implement the same project in the same location. Those are cases that give room for corruption, because if I am then interested in agency A, where and how you implemented this project, you can take me to that location and show me that, oh, you have provided this support. And then the other agency that also, duplicated that project, if I go to that same agency too, they will take me to the same location. And then at the end of the day, you don't know who among the 2 agencies have actually implemented the project.
Interesting. You know, and then when you look at the fact that, I mean, and our capital expenditure as a federal government, because we're not even going down to the states. I know that you've also tried to intervene at the state level, and I also know that ICP is trying to do some work at the state level as well. But this, I think your focus in general has just been on the federal government's capital expenditure. Am I right?
Yes, in general, yes, but
yes.
we're also beaming our light on the subnational.
And that amounts to trillions of naira. The budget right now is in trillions. And I think what is amazing is that it is just a fraction, because our capital expenditure is just roughly about 25% of all that we're spending. Where we are spending a lot of money now is our recurrent expenditure, which is gulping about 75% of the budget. That's right.
True.
So it would seem to me that if budget alone is concentrating on capital expenditure, we might be needing at least 4 different budgets, that's organizations, to look at the entire gamut of the budget. Maybe 3 of them concentrating on recurrent expenditure, because right now it seems that there is a lot of corruption in the recurrent expenditure as well.
There is, and you saw that also coming from the summits, where cases were being made, reference were being made to recruitment that are not to the knowledge of the head of service. Reference were being made to you know, trips, travel trips. The panel session that you handle on at that summit, I had the professor from PACAG, you know, giving instances of travels that government officials who made, and certain fund is given to them for those travels, and maybe those funds are not utilized because provisions were made on another end, and then they want to return such fund, and they are saying this is non-refundable. You can have it. It's not done that way. We all run business. We all run family, and we know how it is to manage resources. And you realize that the slogan that is in governments of recent is that we have revenue problem, right? And I think Nigeria has come to terms with that. The president is saying that. The minister is saying that. All the key stakeholders are saying we have revenue problem. But I remember that recently, just about last month, some weeks ago, we had an engagement with the budget office. Dr. Ben Akabweze, who was also at the summit. At the summit, yeah. Right? And I said that it is high time we began to also call attention to our expenditure inefficiency problem. So we do not just have revenue problem, right? We have expenditure inefficiency problem.
Indeed.
Also.
So we know that before now. I mean, the former Minister of Finance, Mrs. Kemi Adeosun, talked about an efficiency unit, which the now Minister, Zainab Ahmed, also re-echoed that is still in existence. However, we were not able to say precisely just how much the efficiency unit has been able to efficiently save, you know, on our behalf, because there's still lots of talk around office stationery gulping up so much, you know, duplicitous buying of computers and all manner of things. So really, and these are some of the areas where a lot of money is being expended. When we talk about 75% of our budget, yes, the DG Budget Office acknowledged that, yes, our budget has grown in terms of salaries and emoluments because of an increase in minimum wage. However, he says he admits that it doesn't account for everything. It doesn't account for all that we're currently seeing. So it would seem that there is still a lot of efficiency lacking in the process.
Across board.
How do we begin to entrench this efficiency, one, and increase transparency in this regard?
So it is for us to, the same way the nation came to terms with the fact that now we have a revenue problem. Right? Over the years, we have been shouting that before now. But it was just about a year ago that, or 2 years ago, that the critical stakeholders of government are now agreeing that, yes, we have a revenue problem. We need to first establish that we have expenditure inefficiency problem. And then when we establish that, and then we also establish that our way out to spending more, because now we are also not underestimating the fact that we still need to spend more, irrespective of the inefficiency that we have. And what I say is, if we need to spend more, because it looks as though, don't let us even talk about inefficiency now, we still need to spend more. We need to spend our way out of all of what we are saying. We have the lowest spend in our region or in the world and all of that. What happens to us managing, right, what we have, the resources that we have effectively? That is where we need to start from, right? And what we need to do, the budget office, the Ministry of Finance still has a lot of work to do, right? If there is a department within the ministry that is looking at the efficiency of government spending, right? What is the information they are putting out? They need to put that information out. They need to, and I must give it to the administration also. You know, December 2019, I think, the administration established
precisely?
This current administration established a portal that is called the Open Treasury Portal. And I would say that is a laudable project initiative by this administration, which we wonder if...
Is that a single treasury account?
No.
That's different from the
This
TSA.
is Open Treasury. It's different. This is Open Treasury. This is a portal that tracks the daily spending of government. So government by themselves are now putting out information about how much that goes out of the treasury of the federal government and the MDAs at different threshold, right? And we have built an additional analytic portal on that platform. And we are seeing some interesting stories, some interesting reports. In 2020, we gave out a report that shows that there are payments, thousands of payments that have been made to personal accounts. Are they reducing? Yes. But there are still cases. Just today, as I'm talking to you today, a letter is going to be going out to the Minister for Works, right, and ICPC chairman to probe a construction of fence and security post in the Federal Polytechnic somewhere in Benue State, where we saw on the Open Treasury Portal that 41 million were paid twice with the same description, the same amount paid twice with the same description, one at December 2020, another at June 2021, 41 million being final payment for construction of fence and security posts at a polytechnic in Benue State. And we are asking ourselves, if 241 million, that is about 82 million naira, is final payment for construction of a fence and security post, we are asking how much actually is the entire project, because we can't find, right? And then what is the value for money in this, right? We are sending that letter to both ICPC and Minister for Works this morning to give us clarification under the FOI. And the reason for that is because we are not just asking, we have actually gone to that polytechnic. It's in the middle of nowhere. You cannot even see a fence that is being newly constructed if the money just went out December and January and June this year. And you are asking yourself, when will an end come to this kind of cases that we are seeing, where we are spending almost 100 million to construct a fence? And we are not...
And the fence is non-existent.
We cannot see it. And we are asking, this is 100 million that's the description on the federal government portal.
It is either the fences. You know, your choice of words are remarkable. When I ask you if the fence is non-existent, you say you cannot see it. So it's possible that it is there.
We attach our photo.
Okay.
We took pictures of of tracking that school, and we attach it to the letter we are sending today. Okay. Let the authorities see themselves and let them give us, on behalf of the Nigerian people, let them give us clarification, and then we'll put it out also to the Nigerian people to say, this is what the federal government is doing, this is how much they have spent on this fence. And because, you see, the interesting thing about our work is that we don't generate this data and this information that we put out. They are government information that we are replicating, we are representing it in a more appealing manner and in a way that, you know, citizens can easily access and engage with.
Well, I know that my colleague wants to engage with you on this one. Ayo, it's over to you.
Thank you, Mark. Well, you know, when you just raised that part, the only thing that comes to mind is some sci-fi movie that, I mean, okay, it is there, but we need some divine eyes to be able to see them. Very interesting. Well, you know, Mr. Okewo, what is the role of the National Assembly in some of the information that you have put out? For instance, when you talk about misplaced capital projects in the 2021 budget, many people might be able to see this slide. I see about five items, you know, from on the front page, part of the information that you have also put out, 50 million naira to the Federal College of Forestry, Ibadan, 500 million naira to Nigeria Agricultural Quarantine Service, and all of that is on the front page. The question that comes to my mind is, in the budget defense, in the scrutiny of the National Assembly, is it that the National Assembly didn't notice that this project, this capital project, were misplaced in the budget?
Okay, so thank you very much, Ayo. And it is possible for the National Assembly not to see. And that is why part of what we do, every time the budget is presented to the National Assembly, we go a step further to support that process of budget review by looking at items or budget line that we consider frivolous, budget line that we consider unclear, or budget line with unspecified location, and we put that together in a publication, and we have done that for years now, for well over 6 years now. We put that together in a publication, and we send it to the National Assembly. We have done that consistently for the current 2022 budget, proposed budget that is being revised right now, reviewed at the National Assembly. We have also done the same thing. And why we do that is to help the process, to help the budget defense process, to help the legislators, to point them to areas that they need to look at, areas they need to ask questions, you know, from the executive when they come to defend the budget, because we understand that they may not have that capacity to be able to, you know, look at the entire capital project or the entire budget line. But this is what we have done over the years, and we point them to it. But you check, right? And the question is, what period, what duration do they have to do this work? If we have in 2021 budget, we have about 19,000 plus capital projects. In 2022 budget, we have 14,000 plus capital projects that we have analyzed, and we looked at them line by line. If I make reference to the 2021, you will see instances where, and as we can see on the screen, you will see instances where you will see agency of government, I think Institute of Forestry in Oyo State, want to construct solar lights in Benin, in Edo State. And then you ask yourself, right, first is, what is the capacity of Institute of Forestry to be able to construct or provide solar lights, right? And then if they are providing that solar light, how is forestry in Oyo State, in Ibadan, Oyo State, being awarded or given budgetary allocation to carry out a project in Edo State? And in all of that process, you are looking at inefficiency that is happening there, because it's going to tell on how effective they are able to, you know, monitor the project, if at all the project is being carried out. And then you see duplicity of projects. You see the same project that is being repeated across agency, and you are asking yourself, where is the efficiency in this? At the National Assembly, yes, right, it is.
My apologies. We'll come to the duplicity of projects. But staying on this particular... Yeah, just a second. Okay, just on this, we'll come to the duplicity of projects that you talked about, because you have a list of at least 10 federal ministries, you know, in that one. But concerning this misplaced capital project, when you say that it is possible for the members of the National Assembly, almost 500 of them in the House, and of course committees, different committees handling different ministries, departments, and agencies. And when you say they do not have capacity, I'm at a loss, because I know, I mean, from what you have also said, you have done this consistently for 60 years. I know that part of the things that CSOs, such as your organization, does is to build the capacity of members of the National Assembly. They have legislative aides that work with them, and when you point it to them the first time, I mean, it is expected that they will pick up that skill and be able to use it subsequently. But when we notice that this kind of thing has happened consistently for 6 years, people might begin to suspect that, is it that the members of the National Assembly themselves or their legislative aides are complicit?
So it could be, and truly we can't say, right? But in terms of capacity, there is no shying away from them not having the capacity. Most of these guys are not, are not necessarily economists. They are not necessarily, have that qualification to be able to conduct some analysis to do this work. And yes, they have aid. And that's also part of what we shout about, to say, what are the work of the aids? And as much as that is not within the purview of my job, our job, our mandate as civil society organization is that we provide them, we help them, we point them out. And when we identify these issues in the budget that we need them to look at, it is not that we just identify them and we put them in a vague way. We actually print it out in a publication, and we give that to every single member of the legislative arm of government. Every one of them have a copy, so that there are different committees that they are in charge of. You can just narrow down, and if every committee, if every legislator play their part, right, in looking at the aspect and the committee that they have been assigned, and what we are saying in that area, and they look at it and effect that, it will come together as a whole, right? And I will give you an example that this is possible if we really want to make it happen. In the 2021 budget, when we release our report and said that there are 316 duplicated budgets, capital projects that we saw in the 2021 budget. It looks as if they were not true. But in 2022 project, this proposed budget that we are now analyzing, I can tell you that from our initial analysis, we have seen now that the rate of duplication of budget line or project have reduced from 316 that we identified in the 2021 budget to just 58 in this current 2022 proposed budget that is being reviewed by the National Assembly. And then the issue of repetition or duplicity of ERGP codes, which is a unique identifier for each budget line, we cannot say that in this 2022 proposed budget that is being reviewed. However, there are still 58 other projects that are, also duplicated by description. And we are saying these are projects that have exactly the same description. So you will see the same projects in, for example, the Ministry of Agric, the same description, the same location, but with different ERGP code. You will see the same project being replicated in another agency of government. And so we are already seeing that it has reduced, but it's still there. And while we are coming, we will still wait to see. We have pointed that out to the National Assembly. We'll wait to see when the budget is approved, if anything is done to that, right? If they are amended, if they are corrected, and then if they are amended, it will be good. It will show that, we are moving the needle little by little.
Well, there are those who argue that do we really have the infrastructure to combat corruption? But we'll talk about that when we return from this break. Please stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. Mr. Gabriel Okeowo, Principal Lead CEO at BudgIT, is still with us. Mr. Okeowo, from documents you have put out, you said that you analyzed 19,036 capital projects in the 2021 federal budget, out of which 316 duplicate projects were detected within 74 federal agencies spread across 23 ministries, and the presidency with cumulative allocation of 39.5 billion naira. A question that's on my mind is, someone signed off on the ministry, in the budget of each ministry. It would seem like there is either some complicity or ignorance on the part of the vetting officers in the ministries, departments, and agencies, which raises the question for me of either capacity to fight corruption or to check corruption in the system, or deliberate efforts to perpetuate it. Which one is it for you?
So I'm not sure we should be talking about lack of capacity, right? Because when we look at the budget office, when we look at the Ministry of Finance, these are agency of government with people with that have the qualification, that have the track record, that have the experience, to efficiently manage the resources of the of the nation. And then when we look at other agencies of government like the ICPC, the EFCC, when we look at the legislative function of the parliamentarians, we will see that we have all that it takes. We have all the mechanism to check all of this inefficiency. What is lacking, however, is the willpower, is the political will to really do this. And you see, in our work, we are always more, on the neck of the legislators. And why we do that is because by design, democracy by design balance out itself, right? By design, democracy has created a system of check and balance. And if we all play our role, we identify the legislators as the representative of the people, because in this system of government, the people are actually, the people is the entity with the greatest power, right, to control the other arms of government. And the people are represented by the legislators. And that's why we are saying, if legislators themselves, right, first of all, come with a plain hand, and that would take me back to legislators leading by example. If they are transparent, if they make their budgets open and they make their processes open, right, themselves, they will not have the willpower, they will have the moral right, the moral justification to then go after the other agency of government like the executive and the judiciary and ask them critical questions and perform their oversight function the way it should be.
Okay.
I'm not sure we have capacity problem on this. It's not about capacity problem, truly.
Okay, if it is not about capacity problem, you talked about political will, but it's a different language. So it will seem with Mr. Owasanye, where he says that one of the people perpetrating irregular employment of civil servants into the civil service, they are already being prosecuted. Another question that comes to mind about capacity or infrastructure to fight corruption is the much talked about audit bill or audit law or audit commission. I know that your organization partnered with another CSO recently to have a conversation around the audit bill or audit commission, well, the audit system in the country. In your opinion, do you think that the audit commission being proposed or being considered is a silver bullet, so to speak, to fighting this corruption? Because it would seem like there have been some systems that have perfected the act of corruption in the system, and it would seem like they are very difficult to track. Do you think that indeed the audit law will make a difference?
So in Nigeria, we have seen a lot of system failed. So it would be difficult for me to consider that anything would be a silver bullet, right? However, should we look at our audit law? Yes, because what we have currently, which has been there for quite a while now, may not be strong enough to fight the level of corruption that we see today. But beyond that, right, it is to see even what we have currently, the audit reports we have at the moment, how well is the executive and the legislator going out to carry out the recommendation or call to book some of the issues that the Auditor General have raised in his audit report. As a last check, there are trillions of naira, billions of naira that are unaccounted for, funds that are collected by officers of government that are not retired, right? And when fund is not retired, they can be considered as not spent. And yet, this report comes in, and we are not seeing the man at the ends of affair, talking about the president now, taking any stern action to call anyone to books. It is okay for ICPC to say they are prosecuting or prosecuting one of the leaders of agency of governments that they have found culpable of a corrupt act. But until we begin to make a public show of these people, we might not be able to, see the kind of results that we want to see. We need to be able to name and shame. When we name and shame, we are going to see difference. And I strongly believe, as much as I don't have record or I don't have data from ICPC, I strongly believe that ICPC have a lot of information in their hand of public office holders as well as private sector that we can call and we can shame in this process for us to be able to show Nigerian people that we are actually working. That is what we want to see. If we really want to make any progress, right, yes, we need to look into our audit law. We need to look into not just the audit law, we need to look into the audit reports that have been released, the recommendations in them, the agency of government. Now, more than ever before, we are seeing MDAs that are not submitting reports, that are not, you know, they are not providing information to the Auditor General as may be required. And the man is shouting, is putting out in his report, and it's as though there is nothing he can do. So the Auditor General that we have right now, the audit law we have right now, does not really give that power, you know, for the Auditor General to go ahead and use coercive action to make some of these reform to make them possible. And even our Fiscal Responsibility Act, these are also, you know, acts that we have, but it is as though we have a dog that a toothless dog, so to say. Okay. That they are there, but they don't have that willpower. They don't have, not willpower now, they don't have that coercive power to be able to do what they have been called to do. So we have ICPC that is doing this, you know, whatever strategic way they are carrying it out. But it is not okay for ICPC to just come out or EFCC to give us data. Let them also mention names. Let them shame people. Okay. And until we begin to do that, we may not see tangible results in our fight against corruption.
Mr. Okiowo, we have had quite a number of naming and shaming in the country. I don't know how significantly that has helped to reduce the intensity of corrupt practices that we have seen so far. Now, you talked about the audit report of the Auditor General. Again, I go back to the National Assembly, or maybe there is a different organization or organ of government that is supposed to act on that report, on those reports. You talked about billions. It's actually trillions. An analysis by SERAP of the 2017 audit report names over 2 trillion naira that, as you said, are unaccounted for. Ministries, departments, and agencies that are supposed to report, that are supposed to retire them, that are supposed to do one thing or the other to ensure at least let's have the traction of these monies. We do not have them, and that's just for 1 year. Backtrack to 2015, up until maybe last year or the year before, we still don't have reports. Whose job is it to give teeth to the Auditor General's report that we receive every year? And then, isn't it too slow, the analysis that comes from the Auditor General's report, such that we don't even have any action on them over the years?
Yes, definitely. Whose job? Two questions you posed there. Whose job is both the job of the legislators, because they have that power to call anyone to action. And sometimes when we see them, you know, do this drama at the National Assembly, where they will just want to try to make a show of maybe one public office holder pose question to such a one. We have also seen instances where what we then hear when the public office holder now want to, you know, justify his position, not to be embarrassed. We have seen cases where what we then hear after that is off the mic, put off the mic, right? And until we are able to, they are able to do their job without offing the mic, and the man that wants to also defend himself is allowed to defend himself, because they know that if that man should go ahead and defend himself, they might find some of them also, the legislators, you know, culpable of complicit of that process, right? It is first their job, but I also believe that the body language, right, of the president is also very important, right? And not just body language, let there be a clear executive order, right? To the same way the president can call on executive, the MDAs to tell them, give them ultimatum to appear before the legislators to go and defend their budget, right? The president should also be able to issue such order also to the MDAs, to the ministers, to the executive arm of government, to tell them to go and appear before the legislators to defend the reports of the Auditor General. And then the legislators need to understand that they are not there by themselves. They are there to represent the people. And whatever they are doing, they should do it in the interest of the people. They should not hoard information, right? So that what they cannot do, the people can mount pressure, right? The civil society, media can mount pressure. I will make reference to COVID-19 audit report, right? We understand that there is a report that has been submitted to the National Assembly for quite a month now, over 3 months now, and yet that report is not in the public. We cannot say, sitting here, we cannot say in clear terms, in black and white, total how much the federal government got in funding, in total how much they allocated, the complete figure, right, coming from them that went into the fight against, to prevent COVID-19, and how this fund were used, right? These are things that should be the responsibility of both the legislators and the executive. But I believe that in this, the legislators have a lot of role to play, and we are engaging with them, and we hope that they will come to terms with this responsibility of theirs and begin to carry them out.
We sincerely hope that this capacity will be strengthened across board, because there's a lot of work to be done. You haven't hesitated in showing where you have found some problems. For instance, you've named top 10 agencies with duplicate projects. Some of them are the Federal Ministry of Health with 115 duplicate projects, Federal Ministry of Information and Culture, specifically the headquarters, Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, Federal Ministry of Education, Ministry of Science and Technology, Federal Ministry of Transportation, Federal Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Power. I'm sure the slide is available. That's top 10 agencies with duplicate projects. Federal Ministry of Labor and Employment, who was also fingered in the employment scam as well, and Federal Ministry of Water Resources as well. And you can see some of the figures there in terms of the projects you found duplicitous. But I'm wondering, have there been any corrections? After you raise this alarm and you take it to the agencies, especially those in charge of budget, now we have Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget, and National Planning. It used to be two separate ministries, but now it's under one ministry. I don't know where you take it to, whether you take it to the office of the director, DG Budget, or you take it to the office, of the Minister for Budget and National Planning, that's Finance, Budget, and National Planning. Where do you take it to one, and what sort of reaction, what sort of feedback do you get? Is there any correction? Is this corrected at the end of the day, or do we still leave it like that in the budget? Do they say it's been signed, there's nothing we can do about it? Okay, so the first question, where do we take it to? We take it to the executive arm and the legislators. This that you are saying, this is from the 2021 approved budget, right, which we made available to the budget office and the ministers for finance and national planning. Who in the executive arm do you take it to? In the executive arm is the budget office and the Ministry of Finance. Okay, what sort of feedback do you normally get? So now, two things, right, and not just them, also to the people, for the people action, which is pressure, right? But when we take it to the executive arm, which is the budget office, what sort of reaction do we get? Of course, we get that reaction of, this is not true, this is false, and we really got that, right? And I'm happy. That was why I started from saying I'm glad that ICPC also came out. Yes, there might be disparity in our figure. We said 316 duplicated. ICPC said 257. That is still close. Whether 257, let's even leave 316. Let's work with what the agency of government have said. 257, that's still quite a lot. What kind of reactions do we get? I'm not sure we do get, pleasant reaction, and that is totally fine. We are not meant to get pleasant reaction if we are really doing our job. But what we can see is that between 2021, where we identified 316 duplicated projects, and this 2022 that we are currently looking at, there has been a significant reduction from 316 or 257 in 2021 budget to just 58 duplicated projects in the 2022 proposed budget right now. We can see that, and we give that credit to the budget office or the agency of government that have ensured that that's reduced
right? But beyond that is that we should not go away beyond reducing it now. That's not just the solution. The solution is we should also look back. We are still implementing the 2021 budget. We should go back and look at either the 316 or the 257 that is identified by ICPC, and let us ensure that corruption did not happen in those projects.
So how would you describe the impact of not just the work that you're doing, but the fight? Because you have talked about how this administration has been able to put in place certain things that have increased transparency, which has made the work of people like yourself, the organization, easier. So how would you describe the impact of all of this on the fight against corruption?
Okay, so the truth is we have seen increase in transparency, but not increase in accountability. And transparency without accountability, right, we are still not going anywhere. So we have seen increased transparency. We have seen increase in intention to be transparent, and then action that shows that, okay, this government wants to be transparent. I mean, one of the best things any government can do is to show you how much they are spending per day. Anytime certain amounts of money beyond 5 million naira at MDAs and 10 million at the federal government goes out to any contractor or anybody as a payment, they make that publicly available. That is wonderful. But beyond that, is saying, can we now begin to hold people accountable? Because it is when we hold people accountable that we are really now fighting corruption, right? Transparency is one. Transparency points us to where corruption might happen, just like the case that we pulled out in our, and that is our analysis in June, analysis of the payments from the National Treasury in the month of June, showed us that there is a school in Benue, one of the insights, a school in Benue that had 141 million twice being final payment, right? We have pointed that out. Transparency has brought that out. Can we now have accountability, right? To now say, as we are saying it now, because the Minister for Works may not know, the legislators may not know, ICPC may not know, but we have done our job to bring it out. Can we now move to the next level of accountability? The name of the contractor is there. And one of the beautiful things that government has provided, and the portal that we have built, the portal is very simple. It is called govspend.ng. Anybody can go to govspend.ng and put the name of any contractor there that is receiving contract from federal government of Nigeria, and then you will be able to see all the contract the contractor have received from the federal government, and then you begin to identify are there contractors, and I will make reference to Professor Loide during the summit, Indeed. Saying that private sectors are also syndicates in this process of corruption. So we are not just shouting against the public office holders. Can the ICPC, the EFCC, the law enforcement agency of this world also begin to call out and blacklist private sector that are being used as a plug for corruption, right? Because truly, no public office holder can assign or award a contract to him or herself. They will do that to a private sector and then reroute it to wherever they want to reroute it to. It is high time we need to begin to also call those private sector out and blacklist them so that they are not able, to receive contracts again from the federal government. And truly, the government have made this possible. They are providing the detail of the contractor. They are providing the payment that is made to them. They are giving us voucher payment number and all of that to track. And we are tracking. Right? It's just that what we are seeing is, yes, there is transparency, but there is little on accountability to hold people to account.
Well, I think that, that already spells out where we now need to focus. And we have to thank you for the work that you do at BudgIT. We have been speaking with Gabriel Okeowo, who is the Principal Lead and Chief Executive Officer at BudgIT. Thank you for coming on Sunrise Elite this morning.
Thank you very much, Markwe.
Well, we'll take a break at this point. When we come back, we will have another topic, which of course will be of interest to you. Please stay with us.
Gates shut, security men on guard. access to the Federal Secretariat Abuja is being restricted.
Many of these civil servants behind me are not able to access their offices because they do not have evidence of a COVID-19 vaccination or a negative PCR COVID-19 test.
Only those that fulfill the requirements are allowed access, while those who fail to meet up are restricted.
We are not sending them back to their houses. We are sending back to the various vaccination centers in their own interest and in the interest of others.
This enforcement exercise comes exactly 49 days after the Presidential Steering Committee on COVID-19 announced that only those with COVID-19 vaccination card or evidence of a negative PCR COVID-19 test done within 72 hours will be allowed access into public offices. However, some civil servants have their reservations over the decision.
Is it a must that we must take this? Even in other countries, do they force people to take it? I don't think.
It should be about choice. It should be about willingness to do it and not a force.
I was at the clinic yesterday to take it. The clinic people say that the code on the card has finished, that we should go and come this morning.
For some, there's a need to create more awareness.
Not that people don't like to take it. People want to take it. Let government calm down and educate people more and see the better way of doing it.
Meanwhile, about 300 meters away from the Secretariat, a COVID-19 vaccination exercise is taking place and some civil servants are taking advantage of it.
Some persons complain of having fever and all that after taking the vaccine. I wasn't prepared for all of that. That's why I've not taken it. But now that it's compulsory, I'm submitting myself to take the vaccine now.
After about 2 hours, the enforcement exercise at the phase 2 of the Federal Secretariat appears to have been relaxed and access unrestricted.
Many will say it's the first day, so we hope to see what the days ahead look like. Meanwhile, Nigeria has confirmed first cases of Omicron variant, making it more imperative for the government to enforce stricter measures. Emperor Simon, Channels Television News.
Well, that's where we are next right now, and how far so far? One of the comments made there by one of the civil servants, government should calm down. Well, our guest here this morning will be giving us some perspectives. Dr. Alero Roberts is a consultant public health physician with Luth and CMUL. Thanks for joining us this morning, madam. So,
thank you very much for having me.
Yeah. Let me begin with that seemingly comical response of that civil servant. Government should calm down. Is government calm enough, or you think government is too calm or not calm at all?
I think government has been exceedingly lenient. It gave 49 days notice that this should be done, and people who had anxieties and concerns, which of course they would have, had ample opportunity in that time to have their anxieties and concerns addressed by trusted healthcare providers. And everybody has to see a doctor at some point in their life. They have a family physician, they have a preferred healthcare provider that they go to when they are ill, or their child is ill, or a loved one is ill. They could have gone to such a person and asked advice and sought advice and looked at the information that is available. But if the government has mandated you to take a vaccine before accessing your work, I like the comment another lady made, that it should be by choice. Indeed, it is by choice. You have a choice to take the vaccine or not, and your employer has a choice to allow you into the workplace or not. Everybody has choices, and she chose not to take the vaccine, and the employer chose to exercise their right to limit entry to the workplace. So these are things that I believe that, one by one, every one of us should get our anxieties and concerns addressed and allayed, and then take an informed decision to, as somebody said there, submit themselves to the vaccination.
Perhaps that's the challenge communication of this whole thing to people has been a little not persuasive enough for some people as far as they are concerned. Plus, sometimes the responses coming from other people that they took the injection, they took the vaccine, and they had reactions that they were sick for a little while and all of that. Some of those things are also things that I don't know if you would agree that government has or has not given enough information to people to, as you said, allay their fears.
You are a communication and media expert. Communication is a two-way process. We talk, you listen. You ask questions, we respond. But if we talk and you don't listen, it becomes a unidirectional thing, and nobody can force a horse to drink when it gets to the river. So, the government has done everything it can do to put information out there. There are health educators and health promoters across the local governments that are working to get people educated. But if people don't want to listen, there's absolutely nothing we can do. But then when this kind of mandates now come up, bearing in mind that personally, I really don't like mandates. I don't like the fact that we have to mandate human behavior. But if that is what it's going to take, then that is what it's going to take. I remember when the government had to initiate the seatbelt rule, and all sorts of things came up. But whether we like it or not, we saw a massive reduction in the number of deaths from accidents within vehicles that didn't have seatbelts. We saw that massive reduction. When government mandated, there's a mandate on routine immunization of children. Now nobody quarrels. Now we love the fact that we're on the list of countries that have been accredited as polio-free. So we like the benefits, but we're not ready to put in the work. Communication is a two-way thing. There's enough media coverage, in my opinion. This is one such example, for instance, to say that, look, whether we like it or not, until everybody is safe, nobody is safe. Vaccines have to be taken for us to reduce massively the spread of this virus. Otherwise, we're going to continue to live with it. And worse still, every time the virus transmits between human beings, the chances of another mutation gets higher. New variants are being created. So the thing that we can do best is to vaccinate everybody and make sure we can reduce, I wish I could say stop, but I can't, reduce the transmission of the virus remarkably so that we don't keep getting into this situation just when we think we're out of it.
There are also questions around whether or not we have enough. The latest data, the last time I looked at the data that's available in public domain, says that about more than 6 million people or thereabout, I don't know, maybe about 2 million people have collected the first jab, and only about half that same number have collected the second. With the population that we have on our hands, do you think we have enough? And if we do not,
we will worry about enough when when the doses that we have are exhausted. We can't be worrying about enough when we have doses that have not gone into arms.
Okay.
We have to worry about enough when people have taken up every. If, as the lady said, there was a lady there who did say that she had gone there and it was not available to, or was it the gentleman said to come back today? Please be patient and persistent and get your vaccine. Let me quickly address that issue of side effects. Every vaccine, and every mother of an under 2 will tell you, every vaccine will cause you to have some pain at the jab site, sometimes a fever, some body aches and pains. It passes off in about 24 to 48 hours, most and generally. And we advise everybody, when you get the vaccine, just take 2 tablets of a regular painkiller to forestall those kind of things. But it is far, far better. I can't emphasize this enough. It is far better to have that pain at the jab site and a little bit of fever and body aches than to be in a situation where your family members are running from pillar to post, looking for money for your health care. Please, let's be patient, persistent, and get the vaccine. Please.
Well, there is more on that when we return from this break, Dr. Alero Roberts. Please stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. Well, Dr. Roberts, let's talk about Omicron, the Omicron variant, for a little bit. We understand that, you have mentioned it just now, that every time there is a human-to-human transmission of this virus, it mutates. And it would seem like every successive mutation gets worse. What do we know about Omicron?
Well, what we know so far, to put it in as plain language as possible, is that this is a virus that the variant of the COVID virus that has undergone as many as 30 mutations on what we call the spike protein coat. Now, the spike protein coat is the part of the virus that has been used to create the vaccines, which can record to what it does is that if you have that vaccine, it allows your immune system to recognize the COVID virus via that spike protein coat. So the worry is, or the concern, I should say, is that if it has undergone as many as 30 mutations on that spike protein coat, number one, do those mutations make it more transmissible? Number two, does that mean that we have more severe disease? Does it affect younger or older or everybody? And is it still immune to the vaccine? Is it now immune to the vaccine? So these are concerns I believe the WHO is giving a press conference later today, where some data has begun to come out. But from what we've seen so far, well, I'm speculating here, but it hasn't seemed to cause severe disease immediately. However, even those who have the Omicron variant version of the disease, who have mild symptoms, we don't know what the long-term effect is. And the transmissibility, we're still not sure if it is more or less transmissible than the Delta variant. So all in all, we're still up in the air about the information, but it is clear that this Omicron variant has been circulating in country and in other countries even before the South Africans recognized it and put it out there in the public space. So that's what we know so far that is of public importance.
Information that will be of public importance is whether or not the vaccines being taken now will be able to deal with Omicron. But let's see if we can get more on that from our guest with my colleague in Abuja. Malkwe.
Thank you, Ayo. We have with us this morning Professor Oyinwa Agbara, who is a professor of toxicology, chemistry, and microbiology. He's also the head of Department of Biomedical Sciences at NAL University. Prof, you're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you for having me, Malkwe.
Well, it would seem, you have seen a lot of the headlines this morning. You've also seen the report, filed by our correspondent there, that the federal government did try to enforce its own directive. If you do not get vaccinated, you're not coming into the office, even though I think at some point yesterday that was eventually relaxed, perhaps to give the civil servants a little more time. But from your own analysis, from what you have seen so far, it would seem that COVID-19 itself as an illness hasn't really provided much incentive for people to go get immunized as a result of well, I don't want to say minimal fatalities because, loss of one life is enough, but we haven't seen people dying on the streets as people thought was going to happen if COVID-19 got to Nigeria. So that in itself has been some sort of disincentive. How can we get past that to actually tell people that, look, this is actually a dangerous enough illness for us to get vaccinated for?
Thank you, but yeah, you see, what is happening globally is not just a situation where we have to beg people to get vaccinated. The issue is this virus is here and it's here to stay. And whatever thing that is happening with this virus is what viruses do naturally. Last time I was on this program, I talked about that. We continue to see the mutation sequence. What we need to do, yes, the number of deaths globally compared to the number of people that have died in Africa or specifically in Nigeria is very, very low. However, just as you rightfully said, one death is more than enough. What do we need to do is to make sure that citizens, regardless of where you are, where you work, for you to get vaccinated. And the case of this Omicron virus, we don't know the severity of the effect of this virus because it's new. But having said that, what we need to do is to use both pharmaceutical and non-pharmaceutical approach in treating diseases. So when you talk about incentives, what kind of incentive do you need to give to somebody to protect himself? The incentive is to give more information out there so that people will know what are involved when it comes to the transmissibility of this disease and the severity of the virus if you get infected.
So Omicron was first of all reported by South Africa, but what we now know is that it had been in other parts of the world. I mean, Netherlands came out to say, oh, they already saw Omicron before South Africa came out to say that they just saw it. But however, as a result of South Africa making that announcement, we've seen travel restrictions on countries on the African continent as a result of that. So it would seem that even though the US president has said that what we need is concern, not panic, there have been panic measures, restricting travel. From what we now know about Omicron, should we really be seeing the sort of measures that we're seeing being taken against countries as a result of it?
With all due respect, the UK government, the decision they took, they pressed the panic button, which is very unfair. Because this virus, what the scientists in South Africa did was very, very commendable. They were very transparent. The virus was first detected in Botswana. I think the first set of travelers, diplomats that came into Botswana, I think the 2nd or the 5th of November, 14 out of the 19 diplomats tested positive to this virus. And they are not Botswanians, they're not from southern part of Africa, they come from somewhere. So for UK government to just press the panic button and impose this blanket restriction on travel for everyone coming from Southern African country is very unfair. What we need to do is to work collectively as internationally to make sure that whatever measure that needs to be put in place in order to control and curtail the spread of this virus has to be done. For example, it's good for us to have herd immunity because since we don't know the severity of this virus, we don't know who has it already. We don't know how long it has been in circulation in Botswana, in South Africa, or even here in Nigeria. I think I read yesterday that NCDC has detected
3 cases now.
So we don't know where those people have been. So when we talk about infection tracing, we don't know where those people have been.
But excuse me, can't we tell? Can't we infer? Because if people had been dying, if new deaths were now being recorded as a sudden spike in the number of deaths were now being recorded as a result of COVID-19, and we now find at the end of the day it's as a result of this new variant, doesn't it point us in the right direction? But from what we are hearing, we hear that, it's been mostly in young people, they're the ones who have been affected by it, and that the symptoms have been mostly mild.
Yes, the symptoms have been mild. However, since we know this thus far, we should wait until the next 2 weeks. The most important thing is for us to keep the precautionary measures in place. And if it requires mandatory vaccination, so be it. Just as Dr. Robert said earlier, any vaccine you take, regardless of age, most likely going to have side effects from mild fever, maybe last for about 24 hours or 48 hours. It doesn't matter. So that's why it is nice if when you take this vaccine to take some analgesic to prevent you developing fever. So what we need to do is to make sure that the precautionary measures that we have put in place since 2019 are enforced. Mandatory wear a mask, vaccination. I mean, the death toll in sub-Saharan Africa is about 4.3% globally. And the vaccination is very low, it's about 2.2%. So we need to spread the message out there for people to get vaccinated in order for us to protect ourselves. So, but in the issue of enforcing people not to go to place of work, just as Dr. Robert said, if an employer can make such a decision, you have the right as well not to go to work. But you have the employer as well has the right to say, look, you can't come into this facility if you don't get vaccinated. The bottom line is this, my way, is for us to be cautious, impose the non-pharmaceutical and pharmaceutical measures, get vaccinated. That's the bottom line. That's the only way we can cope the spread of this virus.
It's a problem now. You know, you would say we have to adopt non-pharmaceutical measures. You know as well as I do that wearing of masks is now oftentimes an official measure when people are going into official gatherings or they have to get access into officialdom. That's when they wear their masks. Oftentimes, even within the premises of the officialdom, the masks have been long discarded or no longer in use in marketplaces where even the protocols we put in place for gatherings, no more than 50 people, etc., or no more than 50% capacity of the hall, all of that have since been thrown away. And again, I go back to incentive. It would seem that people haven't seen any consequence as a result of that. So they're not really seeing the need for that. How do we begin to really say, look, it is important, even though you are not exactly seeing any consequences as a result of discarding these protocols?
Okay, when people die in the hospital or at their homes, who gives report of what's the cause of death? People are dying every day in this country. Nobody knows what's the cause of death. Since if we don't put in place good record keeping in reporting death and cause of death, we might not be able to say, yes, this person died of COVID or COVID-related symptoms or illness. But the most important thing is this, is for us not to let our guards down. The capacity for NCDC and the government to keep the sequencing of this virus is very important, so that as samples are being collected, the scientists can continue to do the sequencing tracking in order to know when a new variant, if what we have is a new variant or the variant that we are familiar with. So with that, we can be able to prepare ourselves for whatever thing that might come up in the future. The virus is doing what it's supposed to do naturally. They mutate. So, and they're here to stay. Just like the flu virus. What we need to do is to get vaccinated.
Every time the viruses mutate, I have noticed that there's always concern around whether or not the vaccination or the vaccines themselves will remain effective against the new strain that has been noticed. And I know that concern also came up with the Omicron variant when it was discovered as to whether or not the vaccination that had been taken, because a lot of them were still largely in experimental stages. When I mean experiment, let us not go into that now before I go and say what I'm not exactly aware of. But we do know that these vaccines were the stages were rushed in terms of trying to get the vaccines. I know that the vaccine producers, a lot of them were complaining about the fact that the time given, was not enough, so to speak, to truly test the effectiveness of these vaccines. So that question always comes up every time that there is a new variant. That itself is, for a number of people, poses some discouragement, because if every time a variant comes up, we have to ask the question whether this vaccine we've taken is now effective against a new variant. What exactly is, it goes back against the question of incentive. What incentive really is there for those who are yet to take the vaccine to say, I'm going to submit myself to taking this vaccine?
Well, with the issue of vaccine production, I think the basic science has already been established. And for this particular virus, for this particular family, we know how they mutate. We know how they replicate. So with that, the pharmaceutical production of vaccine has been taking place. We have covered that ground. If we're talking about this maybe 12 or 15 months ago, it would have been a different story. But now we know how this virus works. And the vaccines that have been produced thus far are 80 to 90% effective. Regardless, they are from the same family. So the effectiveness of these vaccines are still there. That's why we're encouraging people now to get a booster shot. If you have gotten the second shot, after 6 months, you are advised to get a booster shot. Just like people take the flu shot every year. So it doesn't really matter. What is important here is that we know how this virus operates. And the scientists have developed the basic vaccine to cover prevention and make sure that humans are no longer exposed. Even though if you're exposed to it, if you contract the virus, with the vaccine, you can be fully protected. So that's the most important thing. We should not be worried it's not going to work. Is it going to work or not? The basic science has been covered already. So it works, and I encourage people to get vaccinated and get booster shot.
Okay, so let's take this to Lagos now. I don't know if Dr. Alero has a different perspective on this.
Thank you, Mark. Well, first of all, Dr. Alero, would you want to quickly respond to my colleague's question so that I have a number of other things to raise with you?
Well, I concur with everything that he has said. The only question that I'm going to ask about people querying the speed of production of a new vaccine is that we don't query the speed of production of a new phone. We'll go out and buy it, or a new plane. We'll jump into it and travel to wherever. Or even a new car. You give me a new car, I'm not going to question how fast it took for it to be produced. The fact of the matter is that the technology exists. Knowledge has exploded in the last 10 to 15 years. So I'm not at all worried about the speed of production of a new vaccine. The technology is there. Computerization has worked. You put in the questions and the algorithms come out and production starts to take place.
Well, interestingly, a new phone, a new car, a new airplane do not go into the human bloodstream, but we'll leave that argument for another time. Well, what is of concern to me
darling,
now?
It can't kill you.
Well, I agree. I understand that.
You know,
but an argument, well, a conversation that's been going on, and I'm pretty sure that you might be able to speak with it. It's the Yuletide season. Christmas is just around the corner, and a number of people are going to be traveling. You referenced something like that earlier on. And there have been conversations around vaccination for people in the rural communities. How far with that? Because it's part of the reason I mentioned the issue of having adequate conversation with people, informing the people correctly, communicating with them. As you said, it's a two-way street. Do people even understand why they need to take, you know, these vaccines and all of that? So in terms of vaccination for people in underserved rural communities, how far would you say we have come with that?
Well, unfortunately, I'm not privy to the data, if it exists, as to what the vaccine coverage in rural areas has been. So I shan't even begin to speculate as to what it can be. But it is vitally important that the local governments, the ministers, the medical officers of health in local governments are empowered and strengthened to be able to lead their teams out, particularly their health promoters, their health educators, to go literally door to door, village to village, hamlet to hamlet, and make sure people are educated and vaccinated. And having said that, COVID is a good excuse for us to deploy resources to that. But don't forget that when they do go out there, they're able to give education on so many things: child nutrition, you know, healthy pregnancies, environmental conditions, and so on and so forth, water, sanitation, and hygiene. So we need to make sure that the primary healthcare system is actually empowered and strengthened to deliver the services that are going to keep rural communities safe. Because you can imagine a situation where, you know, people from the city go back home for Christmas and the Yuletide, carrying the virus with them to unprotected family members, community members. It's unconscionable. And then you have to bear in mind that they're carrying the virus back to unprotected community residents and family members who may have poorer access to healthcare when situations arise. So I think it is vitally important that we look seriously at that community engagement and making sure that the primary healthcare services can deliver on those services.
Do you think that state governments, the subnationals, are by themselves even aware of this, of the severity of what you have just mentioned now, talking about serving the underserved rural communities, these vaccines?
Well, one can point to some states, I don't want to mention names, obviously, but one can point to some states where the state governors are certainly up and doing and making sure that they're using all the resources at their disposal to ensure that people in the communities are served. And this is not just with health, it is also with education, because don't forget that at that level, you've got a multiplicity of sectors that need to work hand in hand. You've got health, you've got education, you've got environment, you've got housing, you've got road transport, you know, you've got works and housing, you've got power, you've got agriculture, to make sure that everybody comes together to ensure that the services are available to protect community residents. Because in protecting anybody from disease, it's not just a physician's job? Really? Has the person eaten well? Are they properly housed? Do they have access to healthcare? Do they have roads? Can they farm safely? Are they secure? Are they safe? Is there water? You know, all these things have to. So you can point to one or two states, well, more than one or two states, a few states that are up and doing. And you can point to quite a few other states, and you wonder, do they even have an executive governor who cares about the people?
Well, we have to thank you very much for all the information that you have given us. I mean, being a public health physician, definitely the passion is understandable. Dr. Alera Roberts, consultant public health physician, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Malpe.
Oh, we still have Professor Wangwara here with us, and there have been complaints, though, even while we're trying to get people to go out there, getting the services to the people when they do go out is very important. There are those who are complaining that they cannot get the vaccines, or those who have gone for first shots who say that the booster shots are not available. So, for instance, the Moderna vaccine, for instance, a lot of people have been saying they've not been able to get it. The complaints are getting right, particularly in Lagos. What should the authorities be doing? Or should there be a feedback mechanism for this sort of complaints to be able to get to them?
Well, in the distribution of drugs or vaccine, the supply chain, there should be a very robust inventory. How many vaccine doses has we received? How many has been administered? With that, just like if you have a store and you sell products in your store, when the inventory is low, you restock. Unfortunately, in this case, it doesn't work like that. We have to place the order ahead of time. Nigeria is not only the only country that is in need of this vaccine. The vaccine supply, there's inequality in the vaccine supply in developing countries. We all know that. And that's why World Health Organization is lamenting to make sure that the developed countries, the rich nations, are able to supply this vaccine to developing countries. So what we need to do is to make sure that those that have received the vaccine, the first shot, and once the second shot, we cannot just say, if we receive, let's say, 2 million doses, and we have administered 1.5 million doses, we know that in the next few days or few weeks, the 500,000 doses remaining will be exhausted. Now, the issue that what government has to do is this, to make sure that there's a restocking in the supply. But unfortunately, I don't know where the lapse is coming from. I cannot say for sure. Those in authority might be able to shed more light on that.
Well, Prof, we have to thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us this morning. Professor Oyin Wagwara is a professor of toxicology, chemistry, and microbiology. I want to believe that those who are, in charge of ensuring that, the vaccine stock is restocked, at least till we exhaust what we have in country, will do what they need to do. Prof also heads the Department of Biomedical Sciences at Nile University. Prof, thank you once again for sharing your thoughts with us this morning.
Thank you for having me, Michael, and have a happy holidays.
Well, we're going to be here. Thank you very much, Prof. We're going to be here throughout the holidays as is to serve the people. We have to say that we'll be here, yes, indeed. We're not going to go without taking your meals. Ayo, do we have a few meals now?
Well, I'm sure we have some, but let's see if we can begin to throw them on the screen so that we can begin to take them right now, because most certainly the issues raised this morning have been as interesting, as provocative as they can be. Let's begin with this one. Curbing Omicron spread in Nigeria is certainly something concerning. A person's freedom, that's Olorun Loba Adini. A person's freedom ends where another man's freedom begins. You can't use your own negligence or selfishness to affect others. You have the right not to take the vaccine, just as your employers also have the right to protect themselves and other members of staff from being infected.
And Festus Akimboiwa, also talking about curbing Omicron spread in Nigeria, says government is right to make vaccination mandatory for government workers. But the most effective way of curbing Omicron spread in our country is for our people not to socialize if they don't have to. The Owambe parties can be put on hold for now. We must all do our best to stay alive. A living dog is better than a dead lion. Oh, not another Owambe going not to hold or not going to hold as a result of this COVID-19. I mean, 2020 was hell enough for a lot of people. Well, let us hope that we can do it safely, at least if we're going to do it. Let us all try to get vaccinated. And that plea is not just to, you know, government workers. It's to everyone out there, even those in the private sector and those in the marketplaces. Thank you so much for watching this morning. I'm Mao Kweogu.
I wonder how you're going to have Owambe safely without eating at the parties, and you have to remove your mask to eat or something. I don't know. But anyway, have a wonderful rest of your day. I'm Ayo Makinde.